So EnGenius has sent me another one of their wireless access points. This time it's from their FIT line. The FIT line is designed for homes and small offices. So this is probably more likely the access point you would want from EnGenius if you plan to get anything from EnGenius, because they're more affordable and they also can be controlled through the web interface without needing to be cloud managed, which that is a big win for a lot of home users. You can also buy their FIT controller, hardware controller. It's a separate accessory, which I don't have, but that's an option as well if you want to control multiple devices instead of logging into each one separately. So here it is. It's the EnGenius EWS276-FIT Wi-Fi 6. It's a 4x4 dual band indoor access points. So full disclosure, EnGenius sent me this product to look at and to try out. They don't get to see the video before I put it online when you guys get to see it. So let's take off this cardboard cover here. Let's see what we get. It's getting kind of late, so I'm kind of dropping stuff. So this is the FIT wireless access point. You can see it's nice and thin. Look how thin that is. So when you go up on the ceiling, it would be nice low profile. This kind of reminds me of one of the other Wi-Fi access points that I reviewed earlier, of their mid to enterprise business ones. They kind of have all these Wi-Fi 6 have the flatter, sleeker bezel. So as you can see, there's a reset button, a LAN interface, which is 2.5 gigabits, and a DC 12 volt barrel jack. It seems like a lot of the wireless access points that EnGenius has, they give you the DC 12 volt option. I guess that's nice if you want to just mount on a wall maybe, or a desk or something, or just set on a desk. I don't know, because you wouldn't think you'd want a cord hanging down from the wall and or run a cord like this in the ceiling. It's better to have a PoE Ethernet connection, because it's just one cable going to it, and it's low voltage, so you don't have to worry about. It's not very risky as compared to high voltage when you're running it through the ceiling. And it looks like it has this mounting system here, which comes with a mounting plate. Let's see what's in here real quick. It probably comes with a mounting bracket. Yeah, it comes with mounting hardware. As you can see, there's two different plates here, one into the access point, one into the ceiling or wall, and you'll be able to slide it in and click it in. I think all the ones from the FIT line maybe use the same mounting mechanism, so that would be nice. And it comes with some hardware to mount that as well. So that's all you get with the access point, just the mounting hardware. You don't get any network cables or power cables for the DC 12 volts. You don't get any of that. But that they are keeping the price point lower, and they just give you the bare minimum that you need, because most people have Ethernet cables. You can buy one, they're not very expensive. On the front, there's some LEDs for power, network connectivity, and 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz networks here, I guess. So you have all these different lights to show what you have active on this access point. It looks like labels on a modem or router, where it just labels your network connections and all your different interfaces. So I kind of like that, the way they do that on the EnGenius products. So as I mentioned earlier, these access points can be web managed through the browser directly, or you can use their hardware controller, as I mentioned. And I think you can even do the cloud option as well. So if you like the cloud, you can still use it for these products as well. So I like that there's more flexibility and be able to at least log into this like locally, especially for a home network, because you might only have one or two devices. If you have a small home, you could maybe get away with one access point. So if you can log in directly to that and not have to set up with a controller or cloud manage stuff, cloud managed stuff's not super difficult to do. You have to create an account. For me personally, I don't really want to be dependent on the cloud for my home network infrastructure. I can see that being very beneficial for a business, or you're managing these devices for a client, and you do this for a living for a company. Cloud managed access is great, right? So let's go ahead and switch over to the web interface, and I'll show you what that looks like. So what we're going to do now is look at the web interface for the EnGenius wireless access point. As I mentioned earlier, the FIT models all have a local web-based interface, which is nice because that gives you a third option, because you can control it through the app via the cloud. You can control it through this local web browser, and you can use a local on-premise controller, like a hardware controller that you can buy separately if you have multiple devices you want to control in the FIT line. So let's log into here with the default credentials of admin. It's going to ask you to change your password. I'm just going to skip it just for this demonstration. As you see, the web interface is pretty basic. You can see some connections here. Let's see what this shows. These show the connected clients. I don't have any connected clients yet because I just fired it up in factory default. You can see some real-time traffic and CPU usage. I noticed this traffic page is like busted for some reason. I didn't do any firmware updates, so maybe this is fixed in a more recent firmware update. So let's go to the basic network settings, and you can see you can set your static IP for the wireless access point itself. But I'm doing DHCP just so I can access it quickly, but you can set a static IP there. I know there's a spanning tree protocol settings for the wireless access point. I'm not sure what exactly this means. I guess since it can do some layer 2 things, it helps prevent loops somehow. I'm not sure with that. That's kind of interesting. So let's go to wireless. Okay, so you can change your device name for your wireless device. That's going to show up on your network on your, when you do the apps and stuff like that. So you can rename that. It's probably your host name as well. It just says device name. But let's see. If you go here, you can change your channel widths. By default, it's set to 20 for 2.4. If you're in a congested area, you probably just want to keep it on 20. That means you're not going to be able to go quite as fast on 2.4 gigahertz, but that's always a little bit slower anyway. With the 2.4 gigahertz, it says N/G/B, so I'm wondering if it only goes up the wireless N on the 2.4 gigahertz, so it doesn't even do the faster Wi-Fi 5 and 6 with 2.4 gigahertz. So you're definitely gonna be really slow. So if you go 20 megahertz versus 40, if you're in a congested area, you're gonna go even slower. So it's gonna be pretty slow. For the 5 gigahertz, you notice it says AX, AC, N/A. So it has the full Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 5 is AC, Wi-Fi 6 is AX. So that's the naming conventions there. The 5 gigahertz only goes up to 80 megahertz, so it doesn't even do 160, or some of the newer ones do, like Wi-Fi 6 maybe does like up to 320 megahertz, I think. So they're not super wide channels. So even at 80 megahertz channels for Wi-Fi 6, you can still get pretty good performance, I've noticed. So that allows you to support more clients, probably at a reasonable speed, right? And this green option here just means it's just like a more simple configuration. It locks out these transmit power and all that kind of stuff. So if I uncheck this, notice that it opens up all these different regions and transmit powers that you can change. So I just check that back. It's not that huge of a deal, I guess. You can set your max clients. It looks like it's defaulting to 127 for home network. I don't know how high you can go up to. I thought I could support 300 or something maybe, but you can limit the number of clients. For a home network, if you have a lot of IoT devices, 127 might not be a whole lot. So you can probably bump that up if you really need to. I noticed here that this has 11AX mode, and it says it's disabled. And this is, I think, some Wi-Fi 6 features. I don't know what's included in this mode. I was trying to figure out what that means. You probably want to enable that one. I tried doing that to see if I got better performance between two different Wi-Fi clients, Wi-Fi 6 clients. And it didn't seem to affect performance too much. By default, there's no security on your Wi-Fi network, and you can rename it, and you can hit edit here, and notice you can, change all these settings here for your hidden. If you want to hide your SSID, if you want client isolation, that's if you have a guest network, you probably want that. And VLAN isolation if you want to do VLANs on this wireless access point. So I'm glad these FIT lines, even though they're designed for home and small office, that they still support VLANs, so that's good. And then you have L2 isolation, which has an enable disable option here. So L2 isolation might give you even more isolation. I don't know if it gives you isolation from your other wired devices, so that might be some extra protection if you don't want wireless and wired devices communicating. I don't know if that's I'm assuming that's possibly isolating you from the other wired devices because it's L2. I'm not sure I'm assuming that's what that means. So then you got some band steering if you want to prefer 5 gigahertz. So I like to enable this setting because it encourages your clients to prefer a certain, the faster bandwidth when possible. And then this is your cutoff to switch over to 2.4 gigahertz and your signal strength. And in your wireless mode, of course, this is where you set if you want to do WPA 2 or 3. Keep in mind that WPA 3 might not be supported on all devices unless they're newer. So you got to weigh those benefits out. And you can do WPA 2 and 3, which that might be a good compromise to allow. If it supports WPA 3, it'll do that. If not, it'll fall back to WPA 2, which is potentially a little bit less secure. Since people have been cracked different these older protocols, so you might want to consider that. So I'll just pick this for now as an example. You can put your passphrase in. It defaults to AES. It doesn't even support any other type of encryption. If you have radius set up on your network, which is something I want to try at some point, you can specify your information here for radius, because someone said you don't even need to worry about VLANs when you do radius, because you can assign them to whatever network you deem appropriate, which is pretty interesting because you can use the same SSID but put them on multiple networks. So you might be able to free up some, instead of having one SSID per VLAN, you might be able to free up a little bit of radio bandwidth, by not using multiple, radios to do different VLANs. So I'm kind of curious if that'll improve performance. And you can filter out MAC addresses for your wireless. So if you want to allow or disallow, block certain MAC addresses, you could do that. And there's a little bit of traffic shaping, so you can limit devices per user, or maybe it's for that whole SSID. So you can do some different options here, which is pretty cool. Okay, back to this page. I noticed they have a management interface here that you can connect to wirelessly. I'm assuming this is so if you don't have a wired device that you're using to configure this like I am right now, you can just connect to a Wi-Fi access point and enable this. And it says it turns off if idle in 15 minutes. I guess if it's not being used in 15 minutes, it turns off. But this is something you probably want to disable when you're done configuring your access point. So there's some guest network settings down here if you want to isolate your devices. And there's a management VLAN that you can set, which is nice. You can specify it here if you want to put it on a specific VLAN. And then you click save. One thing I noticed is if you click save on something here, I noticed it pops this box up down here and it says waiting for changes to be applied. If I hit apply here, it just comes back, reloads the page and still says apply. So it doesn't really do anything, doesn't really apply anything. So I noticed if you have to go up to this changes box, and these are the things it says that you're going to be changing, and it shows it like your configuration, you hit apply. So that's where you'd want to do it at, because I was confused for a while. I'm like, why is this not working? It's not working right. So then I figured out you can go up here and hit apply. It's not super intuitive, but it works once you understand what's happening there. All right, so under the advanced settings, you can see that you can have some SMMP settings if you want, some command line options. One thing that I noticed here, which is kind of interesting and probably a potential security risk if you're not aware of this, is that Telnet is enabled by default. So that was something I wasn't expecting. And so you probably want to disable that, because that's unencrypted. Anybody can get access to it. So even if, I'm assuming, they'd have to be on your management network. So if somebody's already on your management network messing around, and you probably already have bigger problems, but you might as well not make it easier, right, for someone to get in. So you can turn off SSH if you don't want that either. I'll show you this Telnet thing here in a second, that how you can just log in pretty easy if you know the IP address of the access point, which wouldn't be hard to figure out for somebody. Of course, the HTTP settings, you want to enable some of that. I'm assuming HTTPS forward means if you connect through HTTP, it'll just automatically redirect you to HTTPS, so you probably want to do that. And then we have email alerts down here. You can just email yourself if there's something going on. I'm not sure what all it would email you about, like if you got disconnected or whatever, or the AP something went down or whatever. It probably would send you some notifications. Okay, for time zone, you can set your time zone here, and time servers, and just the basic stuff for your device. So for the Wi-Fi scheduler, you can see you can enable an auto reboot time. You can set a time of the week to reboot stuff. I haven't found the need to do that for my wireless access points. I don't have EnGenius ones set up as for my main home network, but I haven't really found a need to do that for any of my devices. But it's nice to do that if for some reason you just want to clear things out. It probably doesn't hurt if you're not using it, just to reboot it every now and then. The Wi-Fi scheduler, you can set some schedules during the weekdays and what times you want to have them on and how long. Let's go to tools. Tools, it just has some pings and trace routes. Basic stuff here. You can do some name lookups here for DNS lookups, and then you can do a speed test. Speed test is pretty cool because I actually made use of this to test out to make sure that my wireless access point was connected at 2.5 gigabits, because I'm using a PoE adapter that EnGenius sent me. Luckily they sent me one, because I don't have any 2.5 gigabit PoE switches. I only have 1 gigabit PoE. I had a iPerf server set up. This speed test is for iPerf. It doesn't even say what it's used for. I wish it would say this is for an iPerf test. And the cool thing is this tests the wired connection of your access point, the backhaul, right? So now I know that my access point is connected at 2.5 gigabits and it's actually getting that full speed. Then I know that's not going to be my bottleneck, right, in my wireless performance testing. So this is actually pretty useful for that. But you can see usually on your network switches, you have the LED light up. So I checked that as well, and it looked like it was detecting it as 2.5 gigs. So that's good too. And some device discovery. You can scan your, I guess, network for this to figure out some device. Might be useful if you want to ping something on your network. You can look it up through here. And then you got an account. So this is your local admin account. I think if you log in through the app, it might change your password to be the same possibly, or maybe you have a separate device one. I haven't tried that yet. And then just where you can do firmware updates. You notice I'm at 1.0. So where I mentioned before that this real-time option here, this traffic is busted. So I don't know if, a firmware update will fix that. Maybe it will. I don't know. And then you got some log messages here you can do to see if there's any issues happening on your Wi-Fi access point. So that's a quick rundown of the web interface. I just wanted to kind of show you that so you can see what it looks like. So what I want to do, I want to show you how easy it is to connect to Telnet on this if you have it enabled. So if you just go Telnet, I'm using Linux, so this stuff's already built in. If I say open, and then I do the IP address, 192.168.110.135, I believe. Yep, and then it says login is, it's going to be admin. So if you don't change your password, it's easy to get in. Telnet is not an encrypted protocol like SSH, so they always say it's dangerous. But look at all the options you have. You can go in and you can start changing stuff. Let's go to management, MGMT. So if you want to log in, you see, I can go in and change there's some admin settings, Wi-Fi schedules. Basically all the settings you can probably do in the web interface, you can do here. There's firmware upgrades, Wi-Fi schedule, HTTP settings. So let's do exit. Let's go over to, let's scroll up and see what else we could do. Let's go to, who was it, YLS 3 or 5, let's say. I say 3, I don't know why. Yeah, so you could go to advanced settings, right? And you can change the transmit power, client limitation. You might not, I don't know if you have quite all the settings, but you might have a decent amount of power here with the Telnet. You should be able to probably configure the whole thing, I would imagine. So that's why you definitely don't want to leave that enabled on your network, because someone could just go in and they would have to know your username and password, but still, like, if you forget to change the defaults, it's not hard to get in, right? So this is one thing I'm going to keep in mind when I notice that you definitely want to turn some of those options off that you may not be aware of. One thing I want to test with this is I only have Wi-Fi 6 clients that do 2x2. So I'm kind of curious if I use 2 of those devices simultaneously, if that was saturated 4x4. So I'm thinking 2 devices will be enough to max this out if they're operating at full throughput. Now, we'll test that out and see what happens, because I'm interested to see this access point go beyond 1 gigabit, because this has a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet interface, and I really want to see it go past 1 gigabit. And even if the client itself doesn't go past 1 gigabit, I want to see 2 clients at least go past a gigabit on this access point. What I'm going to do now is do some speed tests with this wireless access point. I'm going to try 2 different clients. I have 2 iPerf instances set up on a third box that has a 10 gig interface. So let's go ahead and start this first one. I'm going to let it run a little bit so we can see what the max performance of a single client is. And then I'll try a second client and see what happens. So we got 655 megabits. It's not too bad. But let's go over to my other machine, and I have it set up here. And we'll start it and see what happens. See, this one actually shows a little bit lower. So this, see how it's like 166 megabits? And then if I go back to my other machine, you see it dropped to 400 megabits. So the 2 combined together is almost the same as a single stream. I was hoping that it wouldn't affect performance that much. See how it kind of jumps around. Wireless kind of jumps around a lot, right? So we got 300 megabits on this side, and about 376 megabits on this side. So it looks like we're getting about the same throughput. So we're getting about the same throughput with 2 clients as we are a single client. It's a little bit disappointing to see that, because the site said you can do 2 clients at the optimal speed. So this is what I was hoping for. I'm going to try iPerf 3 with like 4 parallel streams and see what happens, because I've noticed sometimes with wire connections it doesn't really affect overall throughput very much, especially if your interfaces aren't like super fast interfaces. So I always just kind of leave it off, but I'm going to try with wireless and see what we get on both systems. Let's try this. Let's hit enter, and then I'll go to the other system. I'll enter at the same time. Okay, we're getting 367 megabits here. So, and then we come over to this other system, getting 522. So I think we're getting a little bit better. We got 441 and 300. So we're getting like 800 megabits. It's still not quite past a gigabit. I'm going to do a speed test with the web browser to see what it looks like when I reach out to the internet, because that's a different type of speed test, and we'll see what the performance looks like on that. So let's open up a web browser on both machines and run the speed test at the same time. And then I'm going to look at my OpenSense firewall live traffic report, and I'll see what the aggregate bandwidth is between these two clients and see if we can get higher than 600-700 megabits. I've seen approximately 800, just depends on the current conditions. So let's see what happens. All right, let's look at the traffic report in OpenSense, and we'll see what our maximum throughput is with two different clients. And I did this test ahead of time, and I realized that it does do better when I do a speed test online. I can get past the 1 gigabit barrier with the 2 wireless access points. So I'm wondering if iPerf test is probably not the best test to test your Wi-Fi performance. But it looks like here I can actually get close to almost 1.2 gigabits. This is reaching out to the internet. My max speed is only about 1.4 gigabits with Comcast because it over provisions a little bit. So I'm kind of curious to see if it would go a little bit faster than that. As you can see, this client got 570 megabits. And this client got 548 megabits. I started them really close together. So that's very interesting that a speed test online, I can see more throughput than I can, like say, an iPerf test. I hope you found these test results a little interesting, that different tests kind of yield different things, especially with wireless. And to see the performance difference between iPerf and the speed testing online, like speedtest.net, to see that you can get beyond 1 gigabit aggregate speeds with multiple clients. So you're not going to be able to get 1 gigabit speed on a single client because this is not a 6E wireless access point or a Wi-Fi 7 access point. Thanks for sticking around while I took a look at this product, and I like to walk through products occasionally so to help you make more informed decisions. And I just like tinkering with devices, so I really appreciate when manufacturers send me devices to tinker around with, because I like to see how well they work, and I just want to share that information with you and just have fun along the way. All right, guys, so until next time, I'll see you guys later.